You're listening to the official Reformed Stoic podcast, covering politics, philosophy, theology, conspiracy theories. I'm ready to get to the bottom of this life. Are you? Join Wolfgang, Sketty Squad, Purity Gang as we strive to take dominion over this dying planet. I am Reformed Stoic, and this is my podcast. My friend, my people, Mic check. Mic check. Let's get it. Alex Jones ordered to pay $45 million. I think he'll be all right. I think he'll be all right, boyos. You know, it's a lot of fun to act like Alex Jones is like really the hero that he portrays himself. I'm a fighter. I'm an American. I got hot blood going through my body fast. I want to have children. I want you. It's fun to act like he's a hero, dude, but I don't know, man. I don't know sometimes, you know, you might say, you know, just because somebody's popular doesn't mean that they're not the real deal. I think that is kind of what it means, unfortunately, in today's day and age. Is Joe Rogan a hero? Is Joe Rogan the good guys? Is Alex Jones the good guys? They're not necessarily bad guys. I wouldn't mind being on the Joe Rogan podcast or talking to Alex Jones, but anyway, isn't Jones a CIA operative? I think maybe him and Joe Rogan both are. Let's go. People have clipped this and pointed this out and such just a little bit before we go ahead and start the show. I was a Joe Rogan podcast fan way back in 2010, way before I was a Christian. I had a very different worldview. I was very in line. You see, I watched Joe Rogan's stand-up special on Netflix, and I was very in tune with that way of thinking. I also liked Bill Hicks. And then I found the Joe Rogan podcast, and I remember a clip where Eddie Bravo talked about how Joe Rogan was pulled aside by the CIA. And later, people started to point out maybe why Joe Rogan was contacted by the CIA. Put it this way. Early Joe Rogan podcast days, he went over the fake space landing, fake moon landing. Joe Rogan considered that the moon landing was fake very publicly on his podcast. Then he was visited by the CIA, and now he loves NASA, and he thinks that going to the moon was a very American, impressive, awesome thing that we really did. So just to review, Joe Rogan maybe doesn't believe in the moon landing. Talks to the CIA, now he loves the moon landing and loves NASA and totally thinks we went to the moon. So, obviously nothing suspicious about that. Business as usual. Anyway, no caffeine drink for me today. You know, I had my had one of my sugar-free rock stars. It hit me a little bit rough. It's been a little bit bumpy this morning. A little bumpy since I had that sugar-free rock star. I got myself a great big Danish, like, coffee cake thing. I think it's just a Danish. It's like a giant Danish. I had some of that. Got a little bit of a sugar high going. I was scrambling for topics, and you might notice we only have one news topic today, and then, like, a more broad religious topic. I wanted to do critical race theory and then feminism, but I learned a little something about feminism in YouTube. You search feminism in YouTube and everything's from like 6 years ago, 7 years ago. You search feminism in schools, feminism in college, feminism in universities. I was scrambling on YouTube trying to put together a segment on feminism. Nobody's talking about it. There's no news segments. Latest on feminism in universities, it's just kind of silent. I think maybe there's some YouTube censorship going on. It doesn't seem like they want the establishment speaking about it. So Maybe like on Monday, we'll do a history of feminism. I wanted to do a news, what's going on today in feminism. Couldn't find anything. Maybe Monday, we'll do the history of feminism. Get a little educated. But critical race theory, however, everybody's talking about it. I think I can put together a pretty fat segment. A pretty thick segment. THICC. Woo, that segment's thick. Maybe because it's black, because of critical race theory. Oh, I love making jokes like that are just like so innocently politically incorrect. Okay. Let's get to the news segment. You're listening to the Reformed Stoic news segment. Let's go. Alrighty then. That's that. Let's go. You guys are all set up here. We got lots of news. We only got one article today. I enjoy reading articles for you guys on the podcast. It's definitely a good way to create content, save you guys the trouble of reading. Just the way she goes today. Lots of TV watching fun time. Why Americans are so divided over teaching critical race theory. This is June 24th, November 4th. I made sure to at least get one that was like very new. August 1st, 2022. So this is pretty hot off the press. So this is going to be battle over critical race theory heats up in Oklahoma. How the critical race theory laws are impacting Texas schools. Let's get it going.
Critical race theory is a way of thinking and teaching about America's past and present by looking at the role of systemic racism, what we've just been discussing. But the very term itself, critical race theory, has become a political flashpoint across the country, especially when it comes to how to teach.
Way she goes, boys. Freaking way she goes.
Young people about justice and equity in America. As Amna Nawaz reports for our Race Matters series, the debate over its potential role in school curricula has set off a firestorm that has roiled school districts and state legislatures nationwide.
It's already over. It's got to be over.
Next year, Jamison Maddox will be a senior here in Loudoun County, Virginia. His favorite subject is history, even though he felt Black history was lacking.
I think there could be some things that happened in history that should have been taught.
In school, did you learn about the Tulsa Massacre?
No.
Did you learn about Juneteenth?
No.
Do you feel like those are things that
all of those events are Black people losing? I'm sorry, dude. Like, it's all about perspective. They say we had a very racist history, and I just say that like we had a very like white people winning, kind of like white people like micromanaged everybody. It's like life is a great big game of King of the Hill. And white people won, dude. And now, like, everybody gets a turn to be king of the hill. Come on, man. Can we figure it out a little bit?
should be taught as part of your formal education?
Definitely.
But,
Jamison's mother, Vanessa, agrees.
This is American history. All of it should be taught in a certain...
Wow, hold on, let's take a look at this. So she's Black, winning. She looks like a feminist. She's got like the whole feminist haircut going. Let's go. This looks like some rainbow colors. All right, we got some rainbow. Vote. She's all about voting. I'm going to vote. She's a Democrat, obviously. Let's go vote Democrat. Rainbow. Let's get it for gay people. She's a woman. Feminism. She's a Black woman. Wow, dude. Like, this person is like, her opinion is way more important than mine. I don't know what that is. Some sort of like a weird voodoo, Rosicrucian, demon, Lilith worshipping feminist thing. I don't know.
Agrees.
This is American history. All of it should be taught in a certain context and also age appropriate.
Maddox, who works as a job recruiter, and her husband raised both their sons in this affluent Northern Virginia suburb over the last...
Oh, her husband. So you're not married to a woman? I find that kind of problematic.
2 decades. Last year, as the national racial reckoning resonated here, Vanessa joined a Facebook group pushing what they see as anti-racism efforts in school.
When I saw the anti-racist parent group, I'm like, okay, I got to be in that.
What spurred you to join that group in the first place? What has that been like?
There is a definite need for a group like this. I like to be surrounded by like-minded, fair-minded, equitable people.
Not white people, in other words. Or white people who are like desperate to win your approval.
You don't have to think like me, you don't have to be like me, but you do have to be anti-racist.
Not everyone in Loudoun County sees it that way.
There were parents that were just sick of it. They were just sick of, constant.
This guy's sweating, dude. Yeah, he's sweating. Yeah, you fucking white male. Yeah, what's the matter, buddy? Is it hot in here? Or, yeah, we know what you did. You guys remember in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas? I watched this like a week ago when the cameraman is like, all right, I'm going to see myself out. And then the big lawyer Simone guy's like, we know what you're up to, buddy. He's like rolling face on acid, sitting there with sunglasses on. Yeah, we know what you're up to, buddy. We know what you're up to, buddy.
Constantly being told, if you don't agree with me, then, you're a racist.
Ian Pryor's 2 daughters are in elementary school here. He's a former Trump administration Justice Department spokesman, now leading a group called Fight for Schools, a political action committee pushing back on equity and inclusion measures.
We're not about not teaching history. We're about teaching history in an objective way that is not represented as America is systemically racist.
When you're looking not at individual acts of racism, but the systemic racism that exists within America's educational institutions, what would you suggest be done right now?
So there's a balancing act here of making sure that there's equal opportunity for all, that we're committed to meritocracy, but all.
Put your hands where I can see them. Put your hands where I can see them. Dude, I might have to watch that movie again. I don't know what it is. That movie's kind of cozy, dude. That movie's rewatchable for sure.
Also that, when we are trying to figure out how to deal with any kind of social problems, we do not overstep and overreact.
There's 2 signs right there.
Parents who agree with Pryor are now part of a growing chorus opposing what's known as critical race theory, or CRT, often a graduate-level framework that examines how the legacy of slavery and segregation in America is embedded in legal systems and policies. The thing is, critical race theory isn't being taught here, but that didn't stop dozens of parents from flooding a recent school board meeting to protest it.
Bro, doesn't everybody want to be black anymore? I don't even understand. Anytime I see a Zoomer, I feel like they're listening to some wheelie board, zoom board. They're listening to 6ix9ine and with the flicky with the stippy I mean, how are all these kids who love mumble rap racist, dude? Everybody wants to be black. So part of them is oh, I hate you because you're black. Oh, yo, you check out the new 6ix9ine, it's Liddy. Or you check out the new Kodak Black. Damn, that's Liddy, fam. Everybody wants to be black, dude. Can we just I don't know, man. I'll withhold my opinions for a little bit. This is frustrating to me, and I don't think it's because I'm racist.
Critical race theory has its roots in cultural Marxism. It should have no place in our schools.
I will do everything I possibly can to fight to the bitter end until you prove to me that you are not teaching my children that they are racist just because they're white.
Dude, you just look like a short, bald, white guy. Everybody hates you, dude. Everybody's like, that guy looks racist.
That outrage echoes messaging ricocheting across right-wing media.
Critical race theory is racist. I don't see critical race theory, in our Declaration of Independence.
Much of this can be traced back to a September 2020 directive by then-President Trump, instructing agencies to identify and halt funding of anti-bias training for federal employees that suggests, quote, the United States is an inherently racist or evil country. On his first day in office, President Biden used an executive order to revoke the Trump administration's action.
When I hear the talk of critical race.
Okay, so something that changed with Biden is critical race theory is back on. I was taught critical race theory in my philosophy of law class at UNLV, and we were also taught critical feminist theory. We were shown the gender spectrum. A couple of the classes I had at UNLV that were very heavy pumped with this kind of stuff was philosophy of law and then sociology 101. I took a sociology 101 course online. That was basically get brainwashed by feminists 101. My female teacher of that class, I kid you not, her major, she had like a master's degree in biracial marriage. She majored in like white women getting blacked to give you an idea. So I've experienced this stuff firsthand. It's real, guys. It's real.
Race theory. I immediately get a signal. It's an alarming system for me because it's a misrepresentation and misuse of the word.
Jalea Lyles-Dunn is the Director of Learning for Justice, which offers resources for teachers to create anti-bias learning experiences.
Culturally relevant, anti-racist instruction models needed. We need a classroom set up, so not just instruction, but we also need a space that lets children know you are welcome here. Inclusive education is a space where we all are at the table together. We all hear everyone's story.
The debate over which stories are included and how they're taught has fueled pushback. Critical race theory is now being leveraged as a catch-all phrase by opponents of equity and inclusion efforts in public education. In May, House Republicans denounced it at a Capitol Hill press conference.
Critical race theory is a divisive ideology.
Literally a bunch of bald white men, dude. Are you guys noticing something? All of these like kooky glasses wearing black women love critical race theory and are for it, and all these like old rough around the edges white bald guys are against it. Like, it's pretty just cut and dry, dude. Women all want it and men all don't, and black people want it and white people who aren't liberals don't. It's just pretty straight up.
As did former President Trump at the North Carolina GOP convention this month.
The Biden administration is pushing toxic critical race theory and illegal discrimination into our children's schools.
Nationwide, Republican lawmakers are now legislating on the idea. According to Edweek, as of June 18th, 25 states have introduced bills or taken other steps to restrict education on racism and bias. That includes 5 states, Texas, Idaho, Iowa, Oklahoma, and Tennessee, where bills have already been signed into law. Arizona's proposed bias teaching bill could mean a potential $5,000 penalty for teachers. Texas's bill, effective September 1st, says teachers cannot be compelled to discuss current events, and if they do, they must, quote, strive to explore the topic from diverse and contending perspectives without giving deference. Some educators, meanwhile, are holding Teach the Truth rallies, fighting what they call unwarranted legislation.
I think we're raising up future voters who will not have a well-rounded perspective on their own community and society.
Valerie Wolfson teaches 8th grade social studies in New Hampshire, where a new bill would prohibit so-called divisive concepts related to sex and race from schools.
Teachers would be under pressure for severe censorship or fear of that public judgment. It's set up for people to report on you.
And you think it could have a chilling effect on what people teach in their classrooms?
Completely.
Back in Loudoun County, we sat down with...
You can seriously just look at these people's faces and see who they are, and you know what side they take before they say anything. It's pretty simple.
With school superintendent Scott Ziegler.
We have said for months now, we are not teaching critical race theory in our schools. We're not using...
And there you go. And there's a white guy against it. You got an old woman who's for it and a white guy against it. It is so just cut and dry, dude.
Using any type of program to quote-unquote indoctrinate or convert our children. Our equity work is all about doing what is best for children.
That equity work was implemented after outside probes found black and brown students disproportionately disciplined in Loudoun County, facing racial insults and racially motivated violence, and students of color harmed by school practices.
Are we even allowed to talk to what happens to what? Are we allowed to talk about what happens to white kids who go to primarily black schools? Dude, it's so fascinating because, like, if you can, there's like a lot of dialogue that happens in your head with this stuff because we're not allowed to like really talk about this, man. Like, have you seen the videos where there's like a white kid getting jumped by like 5 black kids, dude? Like, that stuff is scrubbed and hidden, and it's taboo to acknowledge that even exists. I think a lot of young men and grown men and adults are very familiar with what exactly is going on here. Like, everybody, like, all minorities and white women are basically ganging up against white men, and it is having an impact, and let's just keep going.
what was decided at that time was we need to endeavor on a program, a systematic program to help our teachers with this, to give them the knowledge and understanding so they can have conversations around race, very open and very honest and sometimes very tough conversations, so that they can make our schools better for students.
The district put anti-bias training in place for teachers, the majority of whom are white. That was back in 2019. Ian Pryor's group launched this year.
You know, the majority of the country is white. That's rapidly shifting. In fact, I might have to double check, but you know, when it's pointed out that the majority of teachers are white and this is the direction this country is headed in, and why are you saying this? Are you racist? This is a way that they come for your freedom, okay? There's not enough black people. There's not enough women. There's too many white people. It's just, that's not what should decide what employs people, you know? It's to a point where everybody's making sure there's not too many white people everywhere, and then we have this just massive overflow of 20s, 30s guys who are just straight up fucking dropping out of society because it's getting to a point where you're being denied employment because you're not a minority or a woman.
In 2021,
Superintendent says there is no critical race theory being taught here. Why are you arguing against something that's not being taught?
No one is saying that they're teaching critical race theory in Loudoun County Public Schools like it's physics or chemistry. It's being implemented through teacher trainings, and that ultimately drips down to how they teach our students. And it's not a subject, but it's a way of viewing the world.
Vanessa Maddox says she and other parents will continue to push for equity in schools and a more inclusive education around American history.
The opposition groups are saying, we don't care if you teach Black history or, other parts that haven't been taught. We just don't want you to say that all white people are evil. That's not what equity states. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that all history should be taught, regardless of race.
The school year in Loudoun County has just ended, but the debate over what next year will look like is far from over. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Amna Nawaz in Loudoun County, Virginia.
Let's see some comments. Oh, comments are turned off. I wonder why that would be. Let's see. 388,219 views. 4.7K likes. That's a lot less likes than people viewed the video. I wonder how many people disliked it. Well, we'll never know because YouTube turned off the dislikes. I wonder why YouTube turned off dislikes. I wonder if it's because of videos like this that used to get just downvoted into oblivion. Everyone had a good laugh at CNN videos getting downvoted into oblivion. There is like a measurable effect that people speaking up has had. I don't know if you guys paid attention, but leading up to the dislike being removed, you'd go to any CNN video and the dislikes were just, it was comical. Everybody in the comment section was laughing at it. All the comments were speaking out against the video, disliked into oblivion. That is like the voice of the people, and it's very clear. This is the establishment speaking. They're putting their news on the internet. It's the same news that you found on the television once upon a time. Now it's on the internet, and everybody's mocking it in such a public way. In such a public way that everyone can see. And it's probably one of the most visible ways that like people stood out or fought back a little bit. I mean, it doesn't really change that much, but yeah, YouTube removed the dislikes because of that. Oh, okay. Well, they probably have ways to lower the amount of dislikes as well, but it's also tiresome. All right, how critical race theory laws are impacting Texas schools. We got comments here. All right, we got some comments here. Good.
Over the past year or so, critical race theory has become a political term across the country and in the Republican-led Texas legislature.
So exactly what is CRT? It's the core idea that racism isn't the result of individual prejudice, but also something embedded in legal systems and policies.
CRT isn't taught in Texas public schools, but lawmakers passed 2 critical race theory bills earlier this year. And now that the school year is in full swing, the KVUE Defenders checked in with teachers to see how the laws are affecting their classrooms.
Here's investigative reporter Jenny Lee.
While the two laws became synonymous with critical race theory, or CRT, neither uses that term, but both focus on how teachers talk about racism, history, and current events, and they've created a lot of confusion.
But I want you to think for just a second about the power of art.
In Miss Floyd's ethnic studies class,
If you did something about personal identity,
Bowie High School juniors and seniors in South Austin are using art to study other topics.
And we get a chance to dive into both history and current issues.
For the last 26 years, Carlin Floyd has guided her students through different discussions.
That was the first thing that we did on day one.
Including House Bill 3979, one of the so-called CRT laws.
18 ayes and 13 noes, the bill finally passes.
My students can tell you what the bill is.
And while Floyd isn't concerned about how the law will impact her teaching,
I think if it brings attention.
You probably often check in with your buddies at the Federal Bureau office as well, Chris. How's things going over there at the FBI?
To what matters to students, it's great.
Others are.
My main reaction was frustration.
Kynan Murtaugh teaches social studies, among other subjects, at Travis High School in South Austin. He says HB 3979 undermines teachers who are already dealing with so much due to challenges caused by the pandemic.
And in a context where everything is already so close to the breaking point, to be told jump through a bunch of additional hoops, be very, very careful what you're doing. Don't trust yourself about what's important knowledge, that was difficult.
In the Leander Independent School District,
teachers feel attacked and teachers are feeling overwhelmed.
Spokesperson Corey Ryan says most of the teachers feel the same as a result of the CRT laws. He also points out that HB 3979 has had a direct impact on the district's curriculum. For the 2021-2022 school year, 3rd and 4th graders taking social studies can't write a persuasive letter to their lawmakers like their classmates before them because HB 3979 doesn't.
3rd and 4th graders writing a persuasive letter. That's basically the voice of their nutbag teacher being repeated over and over and over and over and over again through the vessels of young children who don't know any better. The letters from they can't write letters, so the teacher can't force the kids to write a bunch of letters, so her same opinion is repeated over hundreds of times. Give me a fucking break.
Allow teachers to give class credit for that assignment.
They didn't get that opportunity in school to write a letter to address something that was really personal to them.
House Bill 3979 went into effect on September 1st, but on December 2nd, Senate Bill.
Dear Mr. President, we want to learn about how racist we are.
Bill 3 takes over. SB 3 continues HB 3979's provision that a teacher cannot be compelled to discuss a currently controversial issue of public policy. But SB 3 changes the requirement for what a teacher must do if they choose to discuss a controversial topic. Instead of having to give equal weight to all sides in any controversy.
What the hell is this green screen shit, dude? Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're our only hope. Dude, she's flying. She's like a warlock or something, dude. Look at her toes. This chick's the fucking boss of the game. She's gonna start flying around and shooting fireballs, and she looks like she's freaking Ganon from the end of Legend of Zelda, dude. She's getting ready to fly around. I need my light arrows or some shit.
As required in HB 3979, SB 3 states teachers shall explore the topic objectively and in a manner free from all political bias. And like HB 3979, SB 3 doesn't mention the term critical race theory. But the law states a teacher cannot require several concepts in their courses, including an individual, because of their race or sex, bears responsibility for actions committed in the past, and that slavery.
I mean, am I allowed to teach kids about the history of the Faustian spirit and the conquest of the European Christian man? Like, can I teach kids about our right to take dominion over the earth? And like, oh, it's just so far gone, you guys. There's no, like, at the end of every South Park, they play like the cheesy lesson learning music, and Stan's like, well, I learned something today. And then everybody like comes to some sort of a happy conclusion, and that's not happening in this country, bro. It's over. You know, if you don't like critical race theory, that's racist. Well, it was just nice when we could just live our lives without having this like guilt held over our heads. I mean, ultimately, we let the slaves go. Isn't that nice? Isn't it just nice that we let the slaves go? Nope. Okay.
Slavery is anything other than a deviation from American ideals.
Recognizing the
SB 3 author Senator Brian Hughes defended his bill when it passed in the summer.
Our classrooms should be places for fostering a diverse and fact-based discussion of various perspectives. They're not for planting seeds for a divisive political agenda.
The laws have caused teachers to ask a lot of questions. Jessica Jolliffe is the Director of Humanities for Austin ISD.
All of these news articles, dude, white guys in suits talking about why it's bad, and then you go to your very clearly like liberal nutbag old lady teacher. Dude, it's just, we already know everything that's going to happen before it happens.
When I'm studying Reconstruction, if we're saying that Jim Crow laws are in place because they're promoting white supremacy, am I violating the law?
Jolliffe says what's concerning is the reason behind the questions.
I think the danger in the pieces of legislation is it causes enough pause, or it can cause enough pause on the part of teachers and the part of school districts to ask, should I engage in this perspective taking? Should I share this particular resource?
That's not a concern for Kilagwa Gera Mujaro.
Is one way that we fight white supremacy, one way that we're anti-racist educators is through representation.
He's a teacher at Desal Middle School in the Flug.
We fight white supremacy. So you need to fight white supremacy in elementary schools? Is that really what's going on? What's the reality of kids entering elementary school, man? Like, white privilege. So when you drop your kids off, like, you know, drop the little black kids off at school, bye-bye Jamal, bye-bye Jerome, have a good day. Drop the Asian kids off, bye-bye Ying, bye-bye Yang, bye-bye Ling Ling. Don't forget your Hello Kitty lunchbox. You know, you drop the white kids off at school, and they're all going to school for the first time. Oh, I hope I have a good day at school. How are the white kids, how are they really advantaged? I mean, okay, maybe they go home and their parents make more money, but I mean, they're all just little kids going to school, man, and this idea that we need to combat white supremacy. I like the idea of like a fourth grader like getting pulled into the office to have a discussion with a Fed. Hey there, chap. You ever play with model boats? Here you go. Look at that there, Sonny. Yeah, you can build a model boat just like that. You know there, Sonny Jim, in World War II, there was these men called the Nazis, and they rode on boats just like that. You ever think about being a Nazi, son? Like, I don't know what I'm talking about, dude. There's nothing that can be done about this. Like, if I don't really know what to say about this, I want to give some big heartfelt speech. We've seen everything we need to see already, dude. The 40-year-old plus white women will never change their opinion. The black ladies with the weird glasses and the cheesy feminist haircuts and the rainbow badges, they will never change their opinion. I'm pretty confident that like barrel-chested white guys in suits who maybe have been balding since they're in their early 20s, they're not going to change their opinion. This is the reality of multiculturalism. That's racist. Like, I'm tempted to say it's better to live in a country that's the majority, like, racially unified. It's just better. Like, this is all this amounts to, is yip yapping, and if there's too many white people, there's not enough diversity. Not enough diversity means too many white people. That's all it means. And this is not something that a debate is ever going to solve, and I don't mean to suggest anything radical. I don't want to have like a race war, but at some point, we decided to like feel sorry for minorities in the country, and now it's all about them. Putin made a great speech about it. Putin talked about, America has this way of bending over for the minority. Well, the majority is important as well. Like, regular people are important as well. There's people who spread this term, the war on regular people. And that's, and it's like, well, will you be, so anybody who's not white isn't regular? It's like, our parents grew up in like 80% white United States. Most people were white, and you just live your life, man. Like, this is wrong, and I just know that everything I'm saying isn't making a difference, so let's just keep watching it.
Pflugerville Independent School District. And even though he's a STEM teacher, not a history or social studies one, Gero Mujaro makes it a point to bring in underrepresented and diverse voices in the classroom. The 7th and 8th grade teacher says he doesn't plan to stop despite the passing of the new laws.
This bill isn't going to stop me from doing that or shy away from why I do it. Mr. Guerra, why is it that we learn about women or learn about Black or brown people in STEM? And the reason is simply because we want everyone to be represented. And no SB3 isn't going to stop us from doing that.
When asked about the new laws, several school districts in the Central Texas area referred to TEKS, or the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, as a driving force of their curriculum. And what's in TEKS could soon change thanks to the new laws. They direct the State Board of Education to add civic courses to TEKS.
All of these subsequent bills and subsequent sessions was meant to do one thing, and that was attack diversity, equity, inclusion, attack honest and truthful conversations in the classroom, and attack teachers trying to have those conversations with their students.
At the time of this interview, Ana Ramon was with the Intercultural Development Research Association. The group fights equity issues in education.
It's like, while I watch this, kind of like the preconceived stereotype is that, like, oh, like, heavy-set, older women are like my enemy and minorities are my enemy, and you watch this, it's like, fuck, like, this is just proving that like older heavyset women are my enemy and a lot of minorities in education are my enemy. This is just making it worse, dude. Like, the racist white people who like aren't comfortable with these kind of people, this is only making it worse. I think dividing lines are just being drawn, man. People want control of the country. It's white men versus minorities and white women, basically. Like, white women have betrayed their men, ultimately, is what's happened. So, yeah, man, they've completely overthrown this country. It's all ideology. It's all about philosophy. When people mock a philosophy degree, when people like, oh, you're studying philosophy? Like, what are you going to do? Work at Burger King? The majority of philosophy students, yeah, like, it's a waste of time. But then you have like philanthropists and billionaires, and philosophy is very important. Ideas. When you have a war, you have the ideas manifesting into troops and tanks and battle and warships. But before your battle can manifest into reality, it starts in the shape of an idea. It starts in strategies. It starts in ideology. It starts in understanding. And this is the philosophy of ultimately people who are making the United States unlivable. It's just getting to a point where we have to get used to people just not liking us for the color of our skin, ultimately. At this point, people just don't like white people for the color of their skin, and it's all about, like, semantics. Like, well, no, black people aren't capable of being racist, or pointing out your privilege doesn't make me hate you or racist. And I don't know, man. I feel like if we were really that privileged, we probably would have done something about this. If white people were really privileged, we probably would have used that privilege to like shut everybody up, bro. So, yeah.
In conversations with students and teachers and parents, as recently as yesterday, students are already feeling that and being told by their teachers we can't have these conversations.
But what happens if an educator teaches outside the parameters of the new laws? Well, Ramon says that's why teachers, administrators, and school districts and advocates are all waiting on guidance from the Texas Education Agency on how to move forward with enforcement. We contacted the TEA several times to try to get some answers. We have yet to receive a response.
If you did something about U.S. identity, we're going to come over here.
Back in Ms. Floyd's ethnic studies class, underrepresented voices are present. It's now a wait-and-see approach to figure out how the CRT laws will affect the power of these voices. For the KVUE Defenders, I'm Jenny Lee.
Jenny, thank you. If there's something you'd like the KVUE Defenders to investigate, we'd love to hear from you.
Okay, we got some comments here. Let's see what the people got to say. As a Mexican, I wonder how Americans are going to teach this theory to Mexicans living in the United States. The vast majority of Mexicans are of mixed race. That is why there are families like mine and many others that we have relatives with white skin, blonde hair, and light eyes, brown, and even black relatives. How would you teach this theory to a person who has white, indigenous, and black ancestors and who is also very proud to carry the blood of these three races? Well, unfortunately, we can't annoy the shit out of only half of you, so I don't know. Awesome question. My answer is that be proud of their heritage, but respect everyone. Learn that from the Bible. Love is love. Race means absolutely nothing. Respect and love. Yeah. People are on to CRT, so they're just changing the name for it or saying it's not being taught. It's CRT no matter what. Don't let them play word games with you. What is CRT? That's cute. It's not anyone's job to give their free emotional labor and educate you. Educate yourself. For me, it's confusing because I still go to school today and I've never been once taught anything from CRT or heard that word until it popped up in the middle of the 2021 Virginia gubernatorial election. None of these videos are helpful either. Can you tell me more about CRT, critical race theory? It's everywhere. Honestly, with the internet available to all, not talking about a painful past will make every student resent the fact that they were lied to. You're speaking for a lot of people, bro. Do people not think they will learn about racism and global history? It would make more sense to teach young students that we are all human, have flaws, make mistakes, which is a key time to learn. The Crusades weren't a mistake, okay? I know you aren't specifically talking about the Crusades. Muslims took the Holy Lands, and then a few hundred years later, we fucking took them back, baby. Let's go. We took our Holy Lands back, man. Conquest. You hear me, feminist teachers? Conquest. We won. Your ancestors, you're a white woman, like Big Daddy Chad, great Chad the Third. He fucking won. He conquested. The manifestation of the European will, it took over the earth and made the foundations for Western society. We came up with peace. Western civilization came up with the idea. Hey, I got an idea. Let's try to not have so many fucking wars. Let's try to be good to people who ultimately we're in control of because we won. Let me guess, that sounds racist. Nobody likes a winner, baby. Nobody likes a winner. Schools are losing their trust money, they're losing their funding, and they're going to go into despair. Disrepair. That's how this is affecting the schools. Let's go. This guy needs to respect his assignment and teach STEM subjects only. Seriously, dude. We have like minority speakers in STEM. It's like, okay, well, still, what does X equal? Like, you still got to figure out what X equals, no matter who teaches it to you, dude. Whatever. Get like a transgender gay black woman in a wheelchair with a peg leg to teach it, I guess. I mean, you still have to get the right answer. This is a lie. Yes, we have no CRT classes in the school, but we do have parts of CRT taught in schools. This is like, this is the socialist communism of today. And as we learned about the Frankfurt School last podcast, the CIA through the Frankfurt School tried to make this like not real communism. So it's funny, like I'm very familiar with the right-wing way of thinking. It's like, oh, that's not real communism. That's not real communism. Well, that's what the stereotypical right-wing opinion of what left-wing people say. Real communism's never been tried. Well, this really isn't real communism. This isn't real socialism. This is cultural Marxism, more or less. That term is a big talking point these days. Everybody rolls their eyes when you say cultural Marxism. I don't care. It's what it is. You take the Communist Manifesto, and every time Karl Marx talked about class, you cross that out and put white women, minorities, gay people, and everybody who isn't a white man. That's it. You take the Communist Manifesto, and whenever it says proletariat, you cross that out and put white women, minorities, gay people, and everybody except for white men. A lot of white men in the proletariat. Our past is not something to be ashamed of. The Hugh White man progressed society about 1,000 years. I just want to be at peace, dude. I just want to like, why can't kids go to school and be happy? You know, why can't they just go to school and, yeah, like teach them history by all means. It's just, what is racism? What point do I want to make about racism? There's something called an appeal to emotion fallacy. And I feel like this term of racism, there's emotions involved. There's emotions evolved with this term. Somebody who feels one kind of way about it will have a different perspective than somebody who feels a different way. It's all wrapped in subjectivity, arbitrary. It's emotional. I got no clue what critical race theory is because I didn't listen and played Clash of Clans instead. Based Zoomer hype. That's censorship. You can't ban knowledge. It's so smart. It's so smart. It's smart people stuff. It's science. You guys, you got to notice that that's how the academic left talks. A lot of really smart people. Something that a lot of really smart people, like, yeah. This me trailing off and like stopping, and that's what happens when you've been gaslit. Society is gaslighting us, you guys. Society's being gaslit. Basically, we're white men and people don't like us, and you're trying to like speak out, you're trying to like say something profound that makes a difference. Nothing's going to make a difference. Like, this is control. This is part of how Big Brother controls you. You are inherently racist as a white man, and you need to conform to these standards that society has set for you, or you're racist. It's like, so basically there's like special rules. Like, what do you want white people to wear the fucking star like the Jews in the Holocaust? Do we need to wear a star that says, I am der white man? Like, that's pretty much what it is, dude. It's not the same for everyone. There's different rules for different kinds of people. That would be my definition of racist. My definition of racism would be, it's one way for one race and it's another way for another race. Like, we get this special bad treatment because of our race.
Let's go to Oklahoma, the latest battleground in the ongoing conservative fight to dictate what can or can't be taught about race and history in our schools. The State Board of Education there voted last week to downgrade the accreditation status of the Tulsa public schools to the level accredited with warning. That means the district has an issue that, quote, seriously detracts from the quality of the school's educational program per the state standards. What happened? An unnamed teacher complained to the board that the district's training materials, quote, shame white people. It sounds like a pretty bizarre legal violation, but it's actually part of Oklahoma state law restricting how public schools can talk about race and gender with teachers and students. In fact, the ACLU calls it a censorship law and even filed a lawsuit against the state for violating the First and 14th Amendments. The law, pointedly named HB 1775, includes a ban on making any individual, quote, feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress on account of his or her race or sex. So, what was in those training materials that someone claimed was shaming white people, making them...
I mean, bro, the direction that education is heading, I've already made it very clear that I think men should teach men. It's getting to a point where I think white men should teach white children, or like white boys. Like, basically, white boys should go to an all-white boys' school and be taught by white teachers. I mean, I guess, like, segregation? Is that, like, a bad thing to say? I think schools should be segregated again? Like, this is just the direction that things are headed, man, and I'm not allowed to have an opinion on it. Your opinion is problematic. Your opinion is racist. Blah, 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 the fucking YouTube algorithm's going crazy. Like, we are under attack by our country. Our country is being weaponized against us. The founding fathers of this country were white men, and this country ultimately represents the interests of an enemy of the people who found it. I mean, not that I really give a shit about the founding fathers. A lot of them were Freemasons, and a lot of them had the revolutionary spirit, but yeah, man, like, your country doesn't fucking like you at this point. And that's covered by everything that we go over here, man. When I'm talking about, like, gang stalking and harassment ops, that's all done by the military and the police and the intelligence agencies. This country doesn't like you. It's not working for you. It doesn't care about you. It doesn't want to help you. It wants to make your life fucking harder. It feels kind of like what I'm saying is, like, headed somewhere, right? Nope, that's it. Back to the video. Definitely not suggesting we should do anything about it. Would be nice, though, wouldn't it?
Feel guilty. The topic of implicit bias, which isn't even mentioned in the law, by the way, but it's scary, awful stuff, right? Implicit bias. Now, what if there was another way to approach this topic? One that doesn't make anyone feel guilty, but rather allows them and others to have some fun in the process. I'm being a little facetious here, but that is the thinking behind a new book, an important new book, called Do the Work, an anti-racist activity book, which is...
Do the work! Is Rick still here? Do the work, neat. Was this book written by a special somebody who likes bluegrass music?
Written by comedian W. Kamau Bell and writer and activist Kate Schatz. It's already a New York Times bestseller, and its approach to teaching anti-racism to adults is through activities, through games. Earlier I spoke with the authors of Do the Work.
I want to, like, take the cover. I want, like, if it has a fancy cover, I want to take the cover of that book and put it over, like, Quadrianu. Put it over a different book, like Quadrianu's for my legionaries only, or I don't know, maybe just fucking Mein Kampf. Or it'd be funny to take the cover of that book and then put it on something else. Like, I don't know, Julius Evola's Revolt Against the Modern World.
W. Kamau Bell and Kate Schatz. And Kamau and Kate join me now. Thank you so much.
Here's everybody. It looks like everybody's accurately... Dude, what is up with, like, leftists and this? I feel like this is a new... What is this? And I don't mean that he's black. Like, they're both doing it. And then that other black woman in the last video... What's the crazy hair and the big glasses and the big glass... Anybody, like... Is anybody noticing this? Like, that other black woman had, like, the weird haircut and the weird glasses and... Something about, like, big, weird glasses and crazy hair, and were they struck by fucking lightning, or... I don't know, dude.
For coming on the show. Congratulations on the book, which I believe is now a New York Times bestseller. Let me start with you, Kamau. When it comes to this topic, racism and anti-racism, I've seen children's books, I've seen autobiographies, academic works. Why an activity book?
Because we wanted to combine all those into one thing is why an activity book. I think we, as parents, as comedians, as Kate's a historian, we saw in 2020 after George Floyd was murdered, a lot of these anti-racism books go to the top.
George Floyd was murdered. I scared Wrinkles. I scared the shit out of Wrinkles when I said that. You know, I've heard a lot of this. This is where I could really drop the ball, like saying something insensitive about George Floyd. Everybody loves George Floyd, dude. It's like everybody like cries. It's just mental illness, dude. People who cried for George Floyd, it's like, dude, you have no idea who he is. And I don't know, dude. Was he murdered? Like, I don't even know anymore, dude. I'm so tired. I'm so just like trailing off. I've been gaslit. This society's gaslighting us, you guys.
New York Times bestseller list. And those books are all great books, but we were like, are people going to read them? And as they read them, are they going to know what to do? And as people who are activists in the Bay Area, we know that anti-racism isn't a thing you read and think about. It's a thing you actually get out into the world and do something about. So we wanted to provide an irresistible way for people to get into anti-racism.
That's a very good point about doing, not just saying. Kate, how did you come up with what to do with these activities, the separate but not equal crossword puzzle, the Jim Crow or Jim Foe game? There's a section about looking into what land stolen from indigenous people you're living on. Do you have a favorite section, by the way, or activity or game from the book?
Oh, I do love all the crosswords. You know, I mean, the idea for the crosswords comes because I'm a puzzler. I love crosswords. You know, we got the ideas for all these in large part, again, as Kamau said, we're both parents and we can.
You know what I respect is prison. Prison is really fucking honest, dude. Okay, if you're white, you try to get with the Aryan nation, and everybody's got swastika tattoos, and then like a black guy walks by, is like, oh shit. He's with the Aryan nation. And then the white guy with the swastika tattoo is like, oh man, that guy's with the blacks. Like a lot of, if you watch prison channels like Wes Watson, that's just the fucking way it is. It's like, what? That guy's covered in swastikas. It's like, oh, you don't understand, dude. Like he went to prison. Like it's different there. But swastikas, like Hitler, how is it different? What do you mean it's different? Like, that guy's just covered in swastikas. It's like, it's prison, bro. Trust me. Even the black people. It's like, wait a second. Hold on. That guy's covered in swastikas. Like, oh, it's all good, dog. He was in the pen. Like, it's just different. People realize something about race in prison. There's a reality to it that's just not acknowledged in real life.
Conceived of this book and wrote it during the pandemic when our young children were home from school, doing school on Zoom from our living rooms while we were working on the book. So it really kind of reconnected us both with how kids learn, how teachers and educators make curriculum engaging and entertaining for young people when they don't really want to be doing it. You know, how do you make math fun for a third grader? You turn it into a fun activity or a video game. How do we make learning about and confronting white supremacy engaging for adults who maybe don't want to think about it? Maybe crosswords might work.
So, come out.
These people look fucking nuts, okay? I'm tired of trying to sound smart. They look like they're fucking nuts. What are you fucking like? Is that Ben Franklin after? He's not really black. That's Ben Franklin, dude. His skin got scorched from the key. He was discovering electricity, and he got fucking zapped by the lightning, and that's why his hair is all crazy. And he's not really black, dude. That's Ben Franklin. His skin's all charred. These people look fucking nuts.
Just taking a step back, racism is a very serious topic, of course. It's not just an issue to talk about or debate. It's a matter of life and death for many black and brown people in this country. How does someone like yourself, how do you find humor? Or do you have to find ways to bring humor when you're tackling such a serious subject?
You know, it's funny. I get that question a lot. And I think that black people wouldn't still be here in this country alive and surviving and thriving, some of us, if not for humor, if not for art, if not for imagination. I mean, you know, it's a survival skill. It's a way you get through the day. There's a reason why some of the funniest stand-up comics in a culture's country are the most from the oppressed group, because you're the ones dealing with how do I navigate through this in a way where I can keep my sanity and my good humor. So I don't find looking for jokes. I'm not the
dude. Okay. There's like people watching this are like, you know what? I know this guy. Jake's kind of racist. Like it's hard for me to like. I feel some type of way about race, but let me just revoke one part of my racism. Being like, oh, that guy's black and he's probably in a gang and he probably totes guns and listens to rap music and he's probably dangerous and sells drugs and kills people. By all means, like, I'm going to give black people a pass for that, dude, because I like gangbanging black people way better than whatever this is, dude. You know, like, you watch a movie like Paid in Full, black dudes in the hood getting this fucking money shit. You want to get this money, or do you want to work at, like, the laundromat? Just, I don't know, dude, just join a gang and, like, there's black people thriving in this country, dude. Maybe you got to join a gang to do it. But, I don't know, man. Like, there's where there's a will, there's a way. There's all kinds of successful people in this country, not just in gangs. I wish I knew what to say about this, man. And I really do feel like it's just this societal gaslighting that's existed my entire life. And it's like, I don't know what to say about this, man. I don't want to feel guilty. I got little man syndrome, okay? I'm a fucking little guy. People used to push me around. I tried to fucking, like, lift weights and be as strong as I can. I don't like people, like, talking down to me. I don't like people trying to push me around. When you're in a classroom as a white man and you're learning about this stuff, I've been through it, dude. People are talking about, like, toxic masculinity and white guilt, or, like, dude, somebody hung up one of those "it's okay to be white" signs at UNLV, and somebody brought it up, and it was discussed in one of my classes. It, like, do you know how it feels to be in a classroom where everybody's kind of, like, looking at you sideways, like, that guy's a white male? Dude, we're not welcome in society anymore. We're not welcome in society anymore. I have real trouble staying coherent on this train of thought, dude. It's infuriating. Just, I don't know, dude. Fucking hang out inside all day and watch Dragon Ball Z. That's what I do.
The funniest person in my family by far. Like, I'm just the one who had a lack of job skills.
Kate, I got to ask you the question as well. The book says it's addressed for white people. Why is the blunt question that a lot of white people will say? Obviously, there's white people are the majority in this country, because you know as well as I do, there are a lot of people right now, not just conservatives, but centrist liberals, who will say a lot of people pushing the anti-racist stick, they're just white liberals. It's not actually black and brown communities. It's white liberals who are pushing this. So how do you respond to that when you get that criticism?
Well, as a white liberal, I think this work is essential, and this is what I want to do with my platform and with my access to publishing and to writing.
Dude, I want to wear a full Templar suit of armor, okay? And at UNLV, some of the classrooms were small, and then there was, like, the big auditorium classrooms. I want to be in, like, a big auditorium classroom, and it's like, okay, it's time for Jake to give his presentation on why we should start the Crusades again. And then I, like, clink up to the stage, clink, 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 walking up in my full fucking suit of Templar armor. Like, hello, I think that we should start the Crusades again. Everybody who's not Christian should basically be put in camps, and everybody's just like, wait, what? And then it takes about, like, 5 minutes for the entire class to start, like, angrily, like, freaking out. Dude, I'm just so done. I'm just so done with whatever this is, whatever these kind of people are, dude. She loves it. Look at that face. She wants power. She wants power. They just all want power, dude. And I just don't want you to have power over me. I don't want these people to, like, tell me to do stuff.
I just think this is urgent. This is a crisis. Like you said, it's a matter of life and death. Nothing about it is funny, and I'm taking a big risk as a white person stepping into this space and collaborating with Kamau, again.
Does she have, like, a really Jewish last name? Scats. Kate Scats. I don't know, dude. I can't tell if she's Jewish or not. None
of it is a joke, but we've got to get people engaged. We've got to try all kinds of tactics. And I do think that people can really learn and engage in some new and unexpected ways with this book.
Come on, I have to ask the question that a lot of conservatives will immediately ask when they see this in their bookstore. Is this critical race theory?
Let's start the Crusades again.
It's only not critical race theory because critical race theory, as you know, is a graduate law school class. So it is not a graduate law school class. But it is about learning the history of this country, learning about the reality of this country in an age-appropriate way, and it's written for adults. That means there's some curse words in there. So yeah, it's only critical race theory if you're confused about what critical race theory is.
Which a lot of people have been confused by because the Republicans have deliberately confused them. And come on your CNN show, United Shades of America, you actually went to Arizona in the first episode of a recent season, and you refer to it as the front line of the culture war. You mentioned the critical race theory debate. You have right now in Arizona, Republican Trump-supporting, election-denying gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake trying to follow the Glenn Youngkin playbook, demonize critical race theory and win the governorship. I mean, what do you make of the way in which Republicans have turned this into a successful political electoral strategy?
I mean, they are really, you have to understand that and give them some credit. They're playing the long game here. If they just come out and said, let's not teach our kids history and accurate history of this country, most Americans, I think, would be like, that's not a good idea. But by turning into some sort of like academic black Marxist activist thing, black is always used as a tool to scare.
It's just history. Oh, we can't teach people history, so your opinion's not in there. Your feelings aren't in there. Dude, this book is like, it's two of the most soy-looking people ever. This guy with his crazy hair and his big glasses barely even has anything to do with the fact he's black. And this book is like, they said it's written to white people. It's like, hey there, little white buddy. Oh, you think it's problematic that we think you're racist? Well, you're just uneducated, and you get in your high chair and let me just tell you about how problematic your people are and how racist. It's like, dude, soy. It's just like a flood of soy, man.
White Americans. So by turning it into a black thing, instead of just saying we need to teach an accurate history, they have been very effective. And as you know, even with the white liberals. So I think that those of us who are in this work and want to create an anti-racist society have to respect that. That's why we have to play the long.
Let me tell you something about history, buddy. Let me tell you something about history. We're experiencing history right now. And you know what we're learning? That democracy doesn't work. We're learning that our country is like this bizarre Freemasonic experiment, and our government goes and force feeds democracy around the world. We go assassinate dictators. It creates power vacuums. We try to set up democracy in their countries, and it continually falls apart and gets ripped apart by ISIS and taken apart. Oh, no, they didn't embrace democracy. Our country starts with the assumption that democracy is a good thing, and we're learning right now that democracy isn't a good thing. So this whole way that they talk about this country, that we're all going to hold hands and learn the objective truth about how white people are racist. Hey, buddy, there's a lot of people who think we're all going to be fucking starving to death this time next year. And guess what? When this country erodes and everything falls and crumbles, I hope the society that rises out of the ashes isn't a democracy. And when there's no democracy, there's just going to be a set way that things are. The leadership, whether it be a dictatorship or a monarchy or some sort of a council, there's not going to be. It's not going to be up for debate what we teach to our kids. The school curriculum is going to be set in stone. It's not going to be voted upon. And ultimately, it will center around the Bible.
Game and say, our version of this is like, we're going to create a fun activity book. And really, by the end of that book, we hope you are like, oh, no, this is real. This is serious. And I need to get organized if I want to fight back against all the Republican nonsense.
And here comes the Fed into chat as soon as I say anything bad about democracy.
Okay, the book's called Do the Work, and you're expecting a lot of people to do the work, especially white people. Just to go back to that debate over where some...
What did this fucking guy just say?
Do the work, especially white people. The book's called Do the Work, and you're expecting a lot of people to do the work, especially white people.
Okay. He says, you're expecting white people to do the work. Got it.
Just to go back to that debate over where some white liberals and centrists stand, which is a lot of them will say, when you raise these issues, they will say it's not helpful. It's just not helpful in this divided.
We could call it the way the fucking world was before World War II. We could call it the way that society used to be before a bunch of Freemason revolutionaries founded the first democracy.
Time right now. We don't want to upset people. We need to win over as many Republican moderates as we can. 1619's not helpful. Ibram Kendi's not helpful. Talking about white supremacy is not helpful. Your book's not helpful. What would you say to them? Because they say, well, you can't dub everyone on the other side as a racist. What is your response to that argument?
Kate, can I step in real quick? Kate?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, come on, you go first, then Kate.
I would have loved if we had handled this in 1619. Like if we had handled America's racism problem as soon as they brought the first enslaved Africans off the boat.
We wouldn't have to talk about it.
We've messed this up.
1619, brah.
We should take you back to Africa, or we should pay you and give you houses and treat you as humans. We can't. Now is the time to talk about it, because we've never actually talked about it and dealt with it. So it's got to be now, because it's just going to get worse if we don't do it now.
Kate?
What I would say is, white people love to quote Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and for good reason. And they love to quote, the I Have a Dream speech and talk about, being judged by the content of your character, not the color of your skin. I would say to them and remind them of what he wrote in Letter from a Birmingham Jail in 1963, which we quote in
1963, Birmingham. Okay, a lot of Martin Luther King quotes. Wow. This is so smug. These people are so smug, dude. This is you're not educated. Look, smug. Smug face. Smug face. You have to look beneath all the craziness and caked on makeup to see it. Oh, this is insufferable.
In our book, when he talks about the regrettable conclusion that the greatest stumbling block in the strive for freedom for Black folks in America is not the KKK, but the white moderate, who is, as he says, more devoted to order than to justice, who says, I agree with the goal, but not the direct action. So that's my response to the white moderate. That's the biggest danger. It's the people who know what's going on.
You want to talk about people fleeing? How about mass migration away from the fucking democracies that the United States sets up, allowing for ISIS to take over, causing mass immigration, fleeing from terrorism that ultimately is the result of our fucking puppet democracy countries. That's why they left. We could talk about a lot of people leaving a lot of places for a lot of reasons, buddy.
But don't do anything.
Why do you think fucking all the men are leaving education in the workforce? You want to talk about people leaving? Men have effectively left this society behind because nobody likes white men anymore. That's what everybody voted on. That's what everybody agreed in our democracy. All right, here we go. More insufferable bullshit. Here we go. Brookings.edu. Why are states banning critical race theory? Let's play Where's Waldo? Where can we find a white man? Is there any white men in here? It's kind of hard to... that's a lady. Anybody back here? Is that green? That kind of looks like a man shoulder. Is it a black man, though? Is there... Oh, here we go. White guy with his arms crossed. Let's go! White man, arms crossed. This is some sort of a man, I think. Okay, Fox News has mentioned critical race theory 1,300 times in less than 4 months. Why? Because critical race theory has become a new boogeyman for people unwilling to acknowledge our country's racist history and how it impacts the present. Okay, wow, look at that. This little baby paragraph is saying a lot. Unwilling to acknowledge our country's racist history and how it impacts the present. You know what? I think I'm coming around. I think I'm starting to come around, you guys. You know what? Guys? This whole podcast has been wrong. This country does have a very racist history. Democracy is racist. The founding fathers are racist. You know what, guys? Democracy is racist. We gotta let it go. We gotta let it go. You're responding with your feelings. That's your white privilege talking. You guys, democracy's racist. We need, I don't know, not democracy because it's racist. So get it out of here, man. You heard him. I'm willing to acknowledge your country's racist history. Well, we can't do a democracy then because that's racist. So fire up the bombers, dude. Fire up the tanks. I guess we could try theocracy, Christian theocracy, maybe something like that. Can't do democracy. It's racist. Okay. To understand why CRT has become such a flashpoint in the culture, it is important to understand what it is and what it is not. Opponents fear that CRT admonishes all white people for being oppressors while classifying all black people as hopelessly oppressed victims. These fears have spurred school boards and state legislatures from Tennessee to Idaho to ban teachings about racism in classrooms. However, there is a fundamental problem. These narratives about CRT are gross exaggerations of the theoretical framework. The broad brush that is being applied to CRT is puzzling to academics, including some of the scholars who coined it advanced. It's puzzling. It's puzzling how these uneducated, knuckle-dragging honkies don't understand. Maybe it's because you don't have a master's degree in biracial marriage like I do. So passionate about something that will most likely never affect me. Oh my gosh, dude. I hope my people win, and I hope your people fucking lose. It's not about a debate, guys. I'm great at debate. I'm a smart guy. Underneath all the debating, underneath all the smugness, and they're puzzled. The intellectuals are puzzled. I hope when the day comes, my people fucking dominate the shit out of your people. I hope you're fucking crying in the streets, watching your fucking belongings get thrown into a fucking fire, dude. I hope my people, when it comes down to it, I hope we dominate the fucking shit out of you and we send you packing, bro. How's that for a debate? This is infuriating. Everything about all this shit is infuriating, dude. They're simply unwilling to remove the blind spot, obscuring the fact that America is still not great for everyone. What is there to even say? Like, what do I even say about this, dude? This is tapping into, like, years and years and years and years of brainwashing, years of lies, years of manipulation. This whole article is just clearly an opinion piece. It's what happens when a society avoids a war for too long. All overly privileged people. Yeah, it's a bunch of people with master's degrees talking about who's privileged and who's not privileged. It's fucking infuriating, dude. Like, oh yeah, you learned about how privileged everybody else was when your mommy and daddy bought you a fucking master's degree? Jeez. I got people, baby. I got people, baby. Christians. Any Christian who, realizes like that this country is gone, it's close enough for me, dude. You're a Mormon. You're a fucking Mormon, and you realize this country's gone. Hey, it's good enough for me, baby. I don't know if you're getting saved, but can you hold a fucking gun? Can you take a step forward? That's the point it's getting to, bro. People out there are like, oh, you don't have the same view as me on every single theological point. It's like, can you hold a gun, bucko? Can you fucking aim? Like, dude, it's just time to fucking... It's time, boys. It is time. I really don't even want to read this shit, bro. To better understand how widespread these efforts are to ban critical race theory, We did an assessment of anti-CRT state legislation. Here's what we found. 9 states have passed legislation. Arizona's legislation was overturned in November by the Arizona Supreme Court. Good. The approach of some Republican-led state legislatures is a method for continuing to roll back racial progress. Racial progress. This terminology they have is so fucking infuriating, dude. Racial progress. You're rolling back racial progress. The progress has only begun. I'm afraid the racial progress will be quite operational. Some parents are worried about their kids learning things in school that they do not have the capacity to address. Oh my gosh! Ah! Are you serious, dude? Are you hearing the tone of this? Your knuckle-dragging, buck-tooth, redneck, honky, country music listening, idiot, uneducated parents don't have the capacity. Well, son, that's that gosh darn school book learning. I don't know. I didn't really know about that big fancy book learning. Hi, I have a PhD in biracial marriage. Maybe I could shed some light on this subject. I don't like you fancy book learning. Oh, it seems that the white male is attempting to communicate with me. I'll have to consult my translator. I'm ready for war, dude. Yeah, I hope these people lose. I hope these people lose fucking hard, bro. It's racist for you to win the war. We don't care. We're gonna win. Ultimately, we cannot employ colorblind ideology in a society that is far from colorblind. Everyone sees it, whether they acknowledged it consciously or not. Everyone sees it. The appeal to everyone. Oh wow, look at the PhD, master's degree. They're not prepared. They don't have the capacity to address it. You just appealed to everyone, dummy. Everyone sees it. Okay, it's time for you to use your PhD to prove to me your worldview. Everybody sees it, whether they acknowledge it consciously or not. I don't see it. I'm a part of everyone. What do you think about that, buddy? I just refuted you. As I wrote in a previous Brookings article on whether the USA is a racist country, I wrote an article. Like, it's just all this, like, oh, they're not educated, they're not prepared. Well, if you check my article, your article is like a fucking blog post. You went through an indoctrination program, you passed with flying colors because you're not a white male, and you wrote a fucking blog post. Oh, well, just check my article. Systemic racism can explain racial disparities in police killings. COVID-19. Oh, yeah, COVID-19. Oh, man. Something racist about COVID-19. COVID-19, man. I'll tell you what, dude. Those white people and COVID-19 and... It's a tragedy. And the devaluing of homes in black neighborhoods. If we love America, we should want it to be the best it can be. Rather than run from the issue of racism in America, we should confront it head on. Our kids and country will be better for it. Yeah, let's confront it head on. That sounds good to me. Let's confront it head on. Come at me head on. Come at us head on. Let's do that. Let's do it. Let's head on it. I want to head on it. I just want you guys to lose, dude. I don't know what your guys' plan is with me. I don't know if you're going to try to fucking like gang stalk me until I go insane. If that's the case, dude, then I'm just going to fucking laugh in the loony bin. I want you guys to lose. Lose, 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 lose. Heavenly Father, please make these people lose. Please make these people lose. They're so insufferable. They're not my friends. They're not my comrades. They're not on my team. Oh, it's so insufferable. It's so smug. All right, you guys. Wow, we managed to we managed to cover this for an entire hour and a half. So, yeah, lots of seething and spurging, and dude, this is just infuriating. I don't know what else to say about it. All right, let's get cozy here. I'm probably not going to have that much to chime in for these. Council of Nicaea, Council of Trent, and then Jay Dyer on Introduction to the Seven Councils. So let's bang them out.
The Council of Nicaea. Before this occurred, there were several different competing views of Christ. Then the Emperor Constantine assembled them all together to decide on one view of Christ. They met for days, fighting and bickering, until finally the current view of Christianity won, and the divinity of Christ was declared. Then the new Orthodox view used its power to stomp out and erase all other competing views of Christianity. Or so we're told. You know, I hear this story a lot from atheists, cults, Muslims, and several other non-Christian groups. They always give me this generic story to try to show me that the Council of Nicaea made up the divinity of Jesus and created a new version of Christianity. However, this is all I ever hear, this generic story. I never get any more details from skeptics, and there's a good reason why. Because when we study the details of what happened before, during, and after the council met, this fable is easily debunked, and we see that Christ's divinity was not made up at the council. So let's start with events that led up to the council. On February 24th, in 303 AD, the worst persecution of Christians began under the Emperor Diocletian and lasted until Emperor Galerius finally issued a general edict of tolerance in 311 AD. 2 years later, in 313 AD, with the Edict of Milan, the Emperor Constantine finally legalized Christianity and allowed its practice. Now I want to stop here and make sure this point is clear. Constantine did not make Christianity the official religion of the empire. He simply commanded official tolerance of Christianity. He did, however, outlaw Jews from stoning Christians and gladiator shows, although they did persist until the 5th century. It wasn't until 380 AD, under the Emperor Theodosius, that Christianity was left as the only legal religion. Shortly after Christianity was made legal, a pastor from Alexandria named Arius began preaching the idea that Jesus was not God, but a created being. He gained a following and began disputing with Alexander, the bishop of Alexandria. So in 321 AD, a local council declared Arius a heretic. However, Arius just moved to Palestine, where he gained a larger following, and over the course of the next few years, the debate became so intense that it gained the attention of Emperor Constantine. Constantine, who had just unified the empire, didn't want anything that would threaten division. He saw the debate between the Christians and Arians as a threat to the stability of the empire, so he moved to settle it. He officially called the council in 325 AD. There were no Gnostics involved, there were no Ebionites involved, or any other groups. The council was called to settle disputes between Christians and Arians only. Most other heretical views of Christianity, like Gnosticism, had mostly died out by this point, and the majority of those professing to be Christians were Orthodox Christians, so there was not a wide variety of different views at the council. Although Constantine originally invited over 1,800 bishops from across the empire, only around 300 were able to attend. Most of them were from the east, with only about a dozen representing the west. Now, it should be remembered what happened to these men less than 2 decades ago. Most of them suffered through one of the greatest Christian persecutions of all time. Many of them faced brutal torture and imprisonment for their faith. So despite the modern view about the participants at the council, they were not the type of men who were fine with compromising their beliefs, especially if a few years earlier they were willing to die for them. These bishops actually assembled in Nicaea to confirm what they had already believed and deal with Arius' teachings. Now, there were 3 parties at the council. The smallest was Arius and a handful of bishops that agreed with him, that the Father and Jesus were of different substance, or heterousios. The second and much larger group was the Orthodox group, led by Hoseas of Cordova and Alexander of Alexandria. Also in this group was the young deacon Athanasius. This group held the long-standing belief of the church that Jesus was fully God and had existed eternally with the Father. They said Jesus was of the same substance, or homoousios. Then there was a third group, roughly equal in size to the Orthodox group, called the Eusebian group, led by Eusebius of Caesarea. However, this group didn't differ on theology from the Orthodox view. They also believed Jesus was fully God and had existed eternally with the Father. They only differed on the use of the word homoousios. The reason is because in previous centuries, Modalist heresies had used the word to teach that the Father and Jesus were one person and not coexisting persons of one being. So in actuality, the Orthodox group and the Eusebian group didn't differ on theology or the deity of Christ. They only differed on terminology. Now, a big modern myth is that Emperor Constantine forced Trinitarian views on the Church, but this simply is not historically supported. Although he presided over the council, he did not push any particular view. He was no theologian. All he wanted was that both sides would come to an agreement and there would be unity in the Church. The Orthodox group listened to the views of Arius, and they overwhelmingly rejected his views as being new and distant from the view of the Church. Eusebius writes that some of the bishops tore up letters containing Arius' teachings. He then writes that church leaders interrogated Arius using scripture, but found he had a new way of interpreting every piece of scripture. They then pointed out that his views had to be wrong because it was new and it wasn't taught in any early church history. Athanasius rhetorically asked, "How many fathers can you cite for your phrases?" They then formed the Nicene Creed, which is a clear condemnation of Arius' teachings and a confirmation of the Orthodox view. In the end, all but Arius and 2 bishops signed the creed, clearly showing there was no major divisions in church theology. The council then moved to deal with other issues, such as which day to formally celebrate Easter. They formally denounced Gnosticism in other minor sects, publicized 20 canon laws, and dealt with other minor issues. The council did not decide on the biblical canon. The canon had evolved on its own over time. However, according to the Muratorian fragment, the canon was nearly complete by the end of the 2nd century. The council did not decide on the use of the word Trinity. It dealt primarily with the divinity of Christ. The word Trinity can be found in early Christian history as it was used by early church fathers.
Maybe you can help out here a little bit, Rick. Can you hash out the differences between Arianism and semi-Arianism?
An acceptance of a divine three can also be found in other early Christian writings. Now, the results of the council did not actually please Constantine. In fact, he was very angry at the Christians. He wanted unity and compromise, not for one side to denounce the other. He actually took pity on the Arians. Arius was exiled and fled to Ilaria for a short time, while his heresy began to spread and gain political power, especially when on her deathbed, Constantine's sister urged Constantine to support Arius, and he actually did. Arius found a new crafty way of interpreting the Nicene Creed in his favor, and Constantine invited him back so he could force the church to readmit him. However, Arius died before this could happen. A follower of Arius, Eusebius of Nicaea, was able to sway Constantine more in favor of the Arian view. Just before his death, Eusebius of Nicaea baptized Constantine, effectively symbolizing his siding with the Arians. After Constantine's death, the Arians continued to gain more ground against the Orthodox view. The Arian bishops that Constantine had favored used their political power to fight against Christianity. Constantine was succeeded by 2 Arian emperors in the east who worked with Arian bishops in an attempt to override Nicaea and write a new creed. Although Arians were still in the minority, they were given much more political power, which they used to try to stamp out Christianity. Many Christian leaders were forced into subscribing to creeds that did not favor either side. Jerome later described this time period as when the whole world groaned and was astonished to find itself Arian. However, despite the power of the Arians, one bishop fought back almost completely by himself. Athanasius of Alexandria continued to argue from Scripture and stand against the might of the Arian heresy. Even when he was banished and removed from his position 5 times, he never swayed and stood for truth against the Arian political machine. He was a popular hero who prevented Christian theology from compromising and giving in to the Arians. So the Arians turned to gaining more political power. But just before the Arians completely consolidated their hold over the empire, they turned to internal fighting and destroyed themselves. It wasn't long before all their political power was lost, and the Christians were able to meet in 381 AD at the Council of Constantinople and reaffirm the Nicene faith. The battle between the Arians and the Christians did not end there. After the Council of Nicaea, many Arian bishops headed north and began converting the Germanic tribes to Arianism. They then eventually conquered the Western Roman Empire, and the Christians had to deal with Arianism again. However, as we can see today, Arianism died out, and Christianity is still going strong and growing. So as you can see, Christian bishops did not inherit absolute political power from the Council of Nicaea and used it to stomp out other competing sects. On the contrary, it was the Arians who gained the political power and tried to stomp out the true church. So there is no evidence the Council created Christianity, the concept of the Trinity, or the divinity of Jesus, or used political power to erase other competing sects. This myth about the council is a complete fairy tale. It astonishes me how many non-Christians use the Council of Nicaea to try to claim Christianity was made up in 325 AD, when historically there is just no evidence for it.
Alright. Moving right along. Trent now.
The Council of Trent was an 18-year-long series of committee meetings attended mostly by church officials and by theologians, and in principle they came from all over the world, but in practice they mostly came from Italy. There were three major purposes for the council that Pope Paul III had called. The first was to answer Protestant criticisms of the church's teachings, which had been getting louder and louder and louder since 1518. The second purpose was to explain exactly where the church disagreed with Protestant ideas about theology, and exactly why the church thought Protestants were wrong and the church was right. And along the way, the committee decided that they wanted to reform worship in ways that would make it more appealing and more meaningful to a population.
I've been trying to find more good stuff to watch from Terry Davis. I stumbled upon an archive. The torrent file of the archive is 865 gigabytes or something like that. It's freaking huge, but the links to all that is on the archive. So I've just been kind of watching through some of that. I don't really know what I think about Terry Davis. I think he's funny. I think he's unintentionally hilarious.
Popular audience and reduce corruption, which was a big problem in the medieval and Renaissance church. Now, you might think that it would be difficult to get a bunch of church people to agree on fine points of theology, and you would be right if you thought that. In fact, since the Council of Trent was largely made up of representatives who had studied canon law, church law, that is, an awful lot of the participants were actually lawyers, it was even harder than you might imagine to get agreement on all of these issues. In fact, it was so difficult and so contentious that two more popes, Julius III and Pius IV, had to bring in a bunch of sessions during their own reigns in order to finish the committee's business. Now, I know what you're thinking. What about Pope Paul IV? Didn't he come between Julius III and Pius IV? What was he doing? Well, the fact is that Paul IV was not exactly interested in compromise. He wasn't interested in agreeing with other people because he believed very strongly in the authority of the Pope, and he also was a huge fan of the Inquisition. In fact, when he died in 1559, the crowds in Rome were so happy that they took the statue of him in the square, put it on trial for its life, chopped off its head, and threw it into the Tiber River. So anyway, the committee meetings had to wait until after he died. He didn't actually contribute then to the Council of Trent, except in holding it up for a while. Now, there are a lot of websites that focus on the theological reforms of the Council of Trent, and not very many that I can find that talk about the social and worship reforms. So that's what I'm going to focus on here. In terms of making the worship experience more meaningful, the church decided that they wanted to enforce a policy of having more churchy-sounding music, of having lots of fancy church decorations, and of making sure that all the priests had a minimum education so that they would be able to at least teach actual Catholic doctrine, create a sermon, and understand Latin when they saw it. The council also did its best to eliminate pluralism, which was the practice of taking a bunch of different church jobs and paying somebody else half the salary to do them for you while you collected the other half for doing nothing. There was to be no buying and selling of church jobs. There was an actual stock market for church jobs. There would be no giving your church jobs to your friends and your family. And if you were creating If you wanted your kids to be monks or nuns, you couldn't make them be monks or nuns. You had to wait until they were close to an adult. They had to make their own decision, and then there had to be a waiting period of at least a year, in some cases 3 years, before their vows could be made. There was also a pretty big crackdown on nuns, led in many ways by Carlo Borromeo, designed not so much to make nuns more holy, but to make them look more respectable. So, for instance, nuns were supposed to dress like nuns and wear nunnish-looking clothing. They weren't supposed to...
What the fuck is this music, dude? This is terrible editing. Oh, weird. Really, something really weird about this last section of the video. Way too loud music. Nuns wearing nunnish clothing. Like, what is going on here?
Rent convents out to rich women. They weren't supposed to live at home. They weren't supposed to wander around.
Okay, nuns wear nunny clothing, I guess. What a terrible ending to that video. Good information, but sometimes very difficult to hear. The music is too loud. Yep. Okay, I think Jay Dyer will lay it all out for us pretty clearly. Nice full podcast today.
All right, this is going to be an introductory video, as many people have requested, about the 7 ecumenical councils. What do they teach and why are they so important? What's the Orthodox position? And we're going to do about 2 minutes on each one just to give an introduction. And I would remind you, if you would, go ahead and subscribe to my channel below. And for most of these topics, there are lengthy, fuller treatments. So if you want to hear more about each one of these subjects, you can click the links below and find the full 2-3 hour treatments. In fact, one of the books I'm going to be referencing, the Pelican book, I did a whole analysis of. I think we spent 5 hours in that text. But so the first thing that we want to notice is that the church is governed by councils or synods. The church had synods in the early church prior to Nicaea, councils like Nicaea, Gangra. One of those I think is right after Nicaea, but those are what we call local synods, and they're patterned on Acts 15, where we see the apostles gather to do the first synod. So it's the normative form of church government, and what we call ecumenical councils are those that are synonymous with the extent of the empire, what would eventually become the Byzantine Empire or the oikumene. Now, these are convoked by emperors, and then they have representatives, hopefully, at least in most cases, that they strove to have the church as a corporate body as far as was possible present. The first of these, of course, is the Council of Nicaea, convoked by Constantine, and this is in 325. Now, there's a lot of misunderstandings about Nicaea. It didn't just deal with the deity of Christ. That's, of course, the most important thing that it dealt with. But it also dealt with other things like the date of Easter, questions about ordination, questions about the Eucharist, if you read the canons of Nicaea, and baptism and other subjects. But of course, most famously, St. Athanasius, Alexander, his teacher, and others had defended the centrality of the equality of Christ's divine nature with that of the Father. And so Christ being the direct offspring of the Father's nature, or ousia, according to St. Athanasius, he thus possessed the same essence as the Father, equal in essence, homoousia, even though he's eternally generated by the Father. And that's, of course, what the Nicene Creed and Council lays down, defending and vindicating the theological argumentation of St. Athanasius the Great. And so the locus of the debate, you'll notice, after the first synod, and then in the next synod, being Constantinople I in 381, it's Trinitarian, right? It's a relationship between the hypostasis or person of the Father and the hypostasis of the Son and their shared divine nature, with the real distinction between the persons and then, of course, the deity of the Spirit. The Holy Spirit is not a force or an impersonal lesser being or an angel or anything like that. He's no creature. So after Nicaea, there's continued debates, and you get questions about the person of Christ, right? And as I said, the Holy Spirit. And so the next council in 381 will be convoked by Theodosius, and it will condemn the heresies of Apollinarianism, Sabellianism, and what's called the spirit fighters, or the pneumatomachy, or the eunomians, different errors about the Trinity once again, and you get what's called Cappadocian vindication, right? This is the Cappadocian theologians, the two Gregories and Basil, who are really, after Athanasius, the most important Trinitarian philosophers and theologians. They really solidify and seal the philosophy and basis and argumentation behind the defense and rationality of the Trinity for Christian theology. And really, this is not even disputed. People might dispute the interpretations of those people, but that they are the most important theologians and formulators is not really in question. Now, that's not to the detriment of Western theologians. There were, of course, important Latin theologians like Hilary, Jerome, but when it comes to the doctrine of Christ and the doctrine of the Trinity, for Orthodox theology and the 7 ecumenical councils, it's really the Cappadocians that are the capstone, you could say, on this doctrine. So once you get Nicaea and once you get Constantinople I and the creed solidified there, there's really not a whole lot more in the patristic period about the Trinity itself. Now, the locus of the debate will shift to Christology, or the person of Christ, or debating in what sense he's divine, in what sense he's dual, in what sense he has two natures, in what sense he has two wills and two energies. That's going to be the locus of the debate for the next several centuries, all the way arguably up until the final of our treatment of the councils, the 7th. And that's not to say there aren't more councils. For the Orthodox, there is an 8th. For Roman Catholics, of course, there's many more. But for the Orthodox, these are the 7 that are the most important for the Trinity and Christology. And the 7th Synod's discussion and vindication of icons will be also directly related to Christology. So really all 7 are Trinitarian and Christological controversies. The next most important council, probably the most debated, you could say. I mean, in one sense, obviously Nicaea is, but the Council of Ephesus. So Ephesus in 431 is called by Emperor Theodosius II, and of course the theologian par excellence of that council is St. Cyril. St. Cyril of Alexandria would go to task with Nestorianism. Nestorius was the Patriarch of Constantinople, and Cyril, of course, being from Alexandria, he was in the lineage to defend that Athanasian heritage and tradition, and he did so eloquently and brilliantly. And so Nestorianism, Pelagianism are condemned, and you have the victory of the phrase of the Theotokos. Of course, this trips up and confuses a lot of Protestants and evangelicals. They don't understand why you would use this term or why this is so important. But the reason for the term Theotokos is to signify that the person that came forth from Mary, right, in the sense of the hypostasis itself, who he is in terms of his eternal preexistence, is a divine person. It is the hypostasis of the Logos that became incarnate, not the Father, not the Holy Spirit, but one among the Holy Trinity, the second person of the Trinity, the Logos, took on human nature from the Virgin Mary. He took his human nature from her, his body. And he possesses a fully human nature, but we say that that human nature doesn't possess any hypostatic or personal reality of its own. It's only personalized by virtue of the Logos who assumed it, as St. Cyril and later St. John of Damascus would say. So at Ephesus, you get the defense of the doctrine that Mariology is perfectly in line and mirrors Christology. So if you get your Christology right, you'll have your Mariology right. If you get your Mariology right, you'll have your Christology right. And this is what Cyril argued. It should also be pointed out that Cyril's key line of argumentation is also the Eucharist. If you read the anathemas of Ephesus, one thing that Cyril argues against Nestorius is that you yourself, Nestorius, in your own liturgy, right, confess to believe in the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. And so if Christ is really present there, it can't just be the body of some man. It has to be the body of the God-man, right? And the human nature that he assumed, according to St. Cyril, is deified. So there has to be, and Cyril wrote 2 letters actually eloquently defending this, called the 2 letters to Sexensis, where he says that the uncreated power and energy of God deifies and transforms the human nature in Christ. And that deification and transformation can only happen if the glory that Christ transmits to his human nature is uncreated. Can't be a creature. And so the energies doctrine there is crucial in Cyril. Cyril in many places defends this doctrine. And we see that there's a direct connection between Christology, Mariology, and the sacraments or sacramentology. And by extension, there will be a direct connection to ecclesiology or the doctrine of the church. So, of course, Ephesus, very, very important. However, immediately after Ephesus, there's a lot of confusion. As you can begin to see in each one of these councils, it doesn't necessarily solve every issue, and the debate continues. And so from Ephesus, the next 3 centuries is going to be a debate about the meaning of Ephesus and the next council, Chalcedon. So after that follows the Emperor Marcion calling the council, and you get the famous Pope St. Leo the Great, who writes his tome where he discusses the diophysite, the 2 natures in the incarnate Christ, in the one person or hypostasis. So what sense does this mean, right? Does this mean that the hypostasis is composite in some moral sense? Does it mean that Christ's one person is composite in some other sense, in the sense of a substantial change? Is it still Nestorianism, right? This is a big debate after Chalcedon. And even though St. Cyril in many places discusses the 2 natures very clearly, even after the incarnation, it's a hotly debated topic. And that's where we get to the next council, which is the affirmation, and this is very important, of the Cyrilline, or St. Cyril from the 3rd council, as we said, Ephesus, the Cyrilline interpretation of the 4th council. So the affirmation at Constantinople II, where you get the famous edict and calling of the council by St. Justinian, and the council produces the theological edict, I'm saying, which says that we have to interpret Chalcedon in a Cyrillian way. This is the victory of the Neo-Cyrillian interpretation of Chalcedon. And what is that Neo-Cyrillian interpretation? Well, the 5th council makes it very clear in its dogmatic pronouncements that it is the one divine hypostasis in 2 natures. Right? There's not a mixture. It explains how we interpret composite hypostasis or composite person, and it means it in the sense of a strictly speaking one divine person. There's not a substantial change in the Logos himself when he assumed human nature. But he really does become united. There is a real union, a real hypostatic union. And the 6th council, right, becomes the next phase in this hotly debated topic. Now it becomes a question with, in what sense does Christ possess this duality? And in what sense is this union real? We know from the councils that have occurred already that the union is real. Right? There's not a loose moral union between 2 subjects, a divine subject of the Logos and a human subject, Jesus. That's Nestorianism. There's a single subject the 5th council will mandate, and that single subject is only divine. However, that single subject acts in 2 natures and possesses both a real divinity and a real humanity. And so the union is real and also at the same time distinct. And distinction, by the way, does not mean that it's separated or divided. Now, when Constantinople II closes, you think that it might be the end, but no, as I said, the debate shifts in 680, 681, and it's called by Emperor Constantine IV to settle the issue of in what sense Christ is 2. And now we get the debate about energies. The debate becomes, how does Christ, the one Christ, possess 2 wills and 2 energies, and there only being one divine subject that's doing these actions? And so there we get the defense of the doctrine of diotheletism and dioenergism, 2 wills and 2 energies, not just by St. Maximus, but also by the West. Pope St. Agatho confirms the theological argumentation of St. Maximus as well as the rest of the council, and you get a re-condemnation of previous heresies. You get the condemnation of monothelitism. Monothelitism, you get also in the Confession of St. Sophronius, the correct interpretation of the duality that's in Christ. And I'll be listing and showing multiple books that will help those that want to dive deeper into this, into these topics if they want to at the end of this video. But so that's the Sixth Council, and of course St. Maximus is the premier theologian there, as well as others, but Maximus certainly stands out. And as you can imagine, the debate is still not settled, right? So there's still more debates to come, and it shifts to liturgy, right? So now we've pretty much settled what the church, in her universal mind, understands the Trinity and the Christological statements to mean, what the creed meant, what the consistent teaching of the fathers from the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th centuries all said. Now it shifts to worship. And there's a question over, well, how should we worship Christ? How should we direct our worship to the triune God, given the fact that we have images, right? The church has a pretty well established liturgical rite and tradition by this time period that's consistent. There's minor variations and debates, as we saw earlier with like the date of Easter at Nicaea, but for the most part, it's consistent. And here the question becomes, should we have icons and images of Christ? And so Nicaea II is called by Constantine VI and Empress Irene, and it condemns and addresses the heresy of iconoclasm, vindicating the theology of St. Theodore the Studite. And eventually you get St. John Damascus basically laying out this whole iconographic tradition based on the Christological doctrines, the doctrines of the Incarnation. So that's the first 7 councils. They all relate to Christ and the Trinity in some direct way. That's the order of theology that Orthodox theology does. It doesn't begin with soteriology like Protestantism. It works soteriology out from the prior assumptions and establishment of Trinitarian and Christological doctrines. If you're looking for a couple of books that will deal with each of these subjects, for the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd councils, I recommend the Pelican set. So you have the first one, which is Emergence of the Catholic Tradition. That covers about the first 4 or 5 centuries. And then you get the emergence of the Eastern Christendom, which will treat of the Byzantine period of the church. And if you're looking at Ephesus, I would recommend the excellent treatment of John McGuckin, St. Cyril of Alexandria, and the Christological Controversy. If you're looking at the 5th Council and St. Justinian and the confirmation of the divine personhood of the incarnate Christ, I would look to the person of Christ in the Christology of Emperor Justinian. It also includes the dogmatic sections of the council in an appendix. For the 6th council, I would recommend something actually pretty small, but maybe a little advanced, but it's the little book, St. Maximus the Confessor and the Disputation with Pyrrhus, because this disputation is what settles the council theologically, the argumentation there. For the 7th council, I recommend St. Theodore the Studite's little book on the holy icons, and you'll see him argue from Christology all the iconological conclusions and liturgical conclusions, and then to kind of cap it all off, I would say the St. John of Damascus work that includes his main 3 pieces of argumentation. So if you would, please hit like and subscribe below and share this video.
Oh, man, that's quite a lot of information there, isn't it? You know, bro, a lot of people who tell the truth, a lot of people who give good information work for the Central Intelligence Agency. It's kind of complicated how it works. It's gotten to a point where, you know, I'm trying to think, what exactly do I still believe from Southern Israelites platform? A lot of the same stuff that I agree with Jay Dyer's platform. I'm in a place where I'm really brushing up on theology and trying to, like, be more confident with what I believe. I think I've ultimately settled in on, like, elements of trad Cath minus actually going to the Catholic Church. So I don't know, man. Sometimes I feel like I just don't have answers. It's like, oh, if you don't have answers, then you don't have it figured out. Bro, we live in a maze of smoke and mirrors. I wanted to give some final thoughts on the first section. I really just kind of spent myself on that first section, and, you know, then we sit here and, like, watch videos about the councils. I I had trouble articulating myself with that first topic because it's just uncomfortable. I feel like this country is just becoming uncomfortable. And as soon as I say that, all these far left liberals, they roll their eyes. These academics and liberals, oh, the poor white male and his first world problems. Well, all of that white privilege should probably help you get through it, huh, buddy? I think the most clear thing I can say is that this country is filled with people who don't like you, who want you to be uncomfortable, who want to talk down to you. Our country is just filled with unpleasant people at this point. Like, it would be nice to live somewhere where people were nicer, where kids can go to school and just learn and not be taught things that are opinionated, led by emotion, divisive, for kids to not be groomed to grow up into a certain political worldview. It's just all so tiresome, my friends. I can say this about the councils. There's no shortcut to learning this stuff. There's no shortcut to learning this stuff. You'd want to read it book by book, council by council. You can learn a good amount from watching videos, but yeah, to be honest with you, I wasn't even really paying that much attention. So, the part on the Council of Nicaea was pretty good. It was primarily dealing with Arianism. Yeah, well, that's far away from any society. A lot of men are just feeling at odds with society right now, and the system is far, 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 far from being understanding of it. Crazy times to be alive, guys. Hold your copes near and dear to your heart. I'll tell you what, man, about as good as it gets is losing your mind in something. Find something that occupies your mind, and it's hard. It's difficult. I usually end up having something on that I'm halfway watching, marathon through Dragon Ball Z while I'm looking through threads on 4chan or just surfing the web, looking for stuff. Try to find peace, guys, and try to ask for peace. Pray. Keep fighting the good fight, brothers. I think we're seeing that the world is just a very ugly place. A lot of good men at odds with the world. Now, this weekend, we've got through the first week of 3 podcasts, 2 grill casts. So what of the weekend? The weekend tends to be kind of this free-for-all where I just go live whenever, and I'm kind of trying to avoid that. I'm almost tempted to say comfy, cozy casts all weekend, bro. Like, do the grill stream Saturday and Sunday. Though last weekend I didn't do any stream on Saturday. We'll play it by ear. If I do decide to stream tomorrow or the next day or both, it will be at this allotted time, 6:30 p.m. PST, 5:30 p.m. my time. The structure protects me from being impulsive on stream. I mean, the grill casts are pretty much like the old, just hanging out. It's pretty unstructured, but it's just enough structure to keep me from complaining a bunch or streaming for 4 or 5 hours. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and say if I do stream Saturday or Sunday, it will be in the allotted podcast time. So God bless you, my friends. It's been good. I appreciate you guys. I'd encourage you to join my Discord. Invites in the description. Try to make it cozy, post links and memes and positive stuff. Keep it positive, guys. Find ways to keep your mind preoccupied. It's a beautiful thing when you can go for hours and your mind is just absorbed in something else. So, peace out, my friends. I'll keep going down the Terry Davis rabbit hole. I've been kind of enjoying that. I'll let you know what I think on that another time. God bless. Peace out. Skip.